Imagine entire cities vanishing overnight. Picture losses so massive that they dwarf the population of modern nations. Between 1939 and 1945, World War II didn't just reshape borders, it erased millions of lives from existence. While we remember D-Day and Pearl Harbor, the true horror lies in numbers that seem almost impossible to comprehend. Today, we're counting down the 12 nations that suffered the most devastating losses. But here's the question that will shock you. Which country lost more people than the next three combined? 12. Yugoslavia. The Balkans bloodbath. Yugoslavia's suffering often goes unnoticed in Western narratives. Yet this nation endured catastrophic losses. Between 1941 and 1945, approximately 1 million Yugoslavians perished, representing nearly 6% of their entire population. The country faced invasion from multiple Axis powers simultaneously, while brutal internal conflicts between partisan groups and occupiers created a nightmare scenario. Ethnic cleansing campaigns, concentration camps like Jasenovac, and relentless partisan warfare transformed Yugoslavia into a killing field. Villages were systematically destroyed, and the Ustasha regime committed atrocities that remain among the war's most horrific. But Yugoslavia's losses pale compared to what's coming next. 11. Greece. Starvation and occupation. Greece suffered approximately 500,000 deaths, but the manner of these deaths tells a darker story. When German forces occupied Greece in 1941, they stripped the nation bare, causing the Great Famine of 1941 to 1942. Imagine watching your neighbors die not from bullets, but from hunger as occupiers seized every scrap of food. Children collapsed in the streets of Athens. The proud Greek resistance fought valiantly, but reprisal killings by Nazi forces were swift and merciless. Entire villages were systematically destroyed, and the Ustasha regime committed atrocities that remain among the war's most horrific. But Yugoslavia's losses pale compared to what's coming next. 8. Hungary. The late war catastrophe. Hungary's 580,000 deaths came largely in the war's final stages, making their losses particularly tragic. As a reluctant Axis member, Hungary tried maintaining some autonomy until 1944, when Germany occupied the country completely. What followed was horrific. The deportation and murder of 400,000 Hungarian Jews in mere months, combined with brutal urban warfare as Soviet forces besieged Budapest. The capital became a hellscape of rubble and death. Civilians were caught between retreating Germans and advancing Soviets, with neither side showing mercy. But could things get even worse? Absolutely.
7. France. Occupation and resistance. France lost approximately 567,000 people, and their experience defined occupied Europe. After the shocking 1940 defeat, France endured 4 years of Nazi occupation, Vichy collaboration, and resistance warfare. Can you imagine living under enemy rule in your own country? The French resistance fought from shadows while the Gestapo hunted them mercilessly. Concentration camps on French soil, forced labor deportations, and the systematic murder of French Jews created layers of tragedy. The D-Day liberation came at an enormous cost, with entire Norman towns obliterated. France's freedom was purchased with blood both from within and without. But the Western Front's losses were modest compared to what happened elsewhere. 6. United States, the arsenal of democracy's price. America's 419,000 deaths might seem lower, but they represented a nation transformed forever. Unlike European countries, the U.S. mainland remained largely untouched, yet American soldiers died on every major front, from Normandy's beaches to Pacific islands few had heard of. Each small-town newspaper carried death notices of local boys who'd never return. The atomic bombs that ended the Pacific War killed hundreds of thousands more, raising moral questions that persist today. American industrial might won the war, but 419,000 families paid the ultimate price. The nation that entered the war reluctantly emerged as a superpower built on sacrifice. Yet America's losses represented just a fraction of what others endured. 5. Japan, from empire to ashes. Japan's approximately 2.5 to 3.1 million deaths reveal the cost of imperial ambition. The nation that struck Pearl Harbor and conquered much of Asia eventually faced annihilation from the skies. American firebombing campaigns turned Japanese cities into infernos, with Tokyo's firebombing alone killing over 100,000 in a single night. Then came Hiroshima and Nagasaki, atomic fire that vaporized entire populations. Japanese soldiers died by the hundreds of thousands on Pacific Islands, often fighting to the last man. Civilians jumped from cliffs in Okinawa rather than surrender. The Bushido Code of Honor transformed warfare into mass suicide. By 1945, Japan's empire lay in radioactive ruins. But even this wasn't history's darkest chapter. 4. Poland, erased from the map. Poland lost approximately 5.6 million people, 17% of its entire population. Think about that. Nearly 1 in 5 Poles died. Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia both invaded, carving up Poland between them. The country became ground zero for the Holocaust, with death camps like Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Sobibor operating on Polish soil. Warsaw was systematically destroyed twice, first the Jewish ghetto uprising, then the Warsaw Uprising. Polish intellectuals, priests, and leaders were specifically targeted for extermination. The Polish resistance fought courageously, but Poland emerged from the war with new borders, millions dead, and decades of Soviet domination ahead. Could any nation have suffered more? Tragically, yes. 3. Germany, the aggressor's apocalypse. Germany lost between 6.9 and 7.4 million people, a staggering price for launching the war. German cities were obliterated by Allied bombing campaigns. The firestorm in Dresden, the destruction of Hamburg, and the eventual Battle of Berlin turned the aggressor nation into a landscape of corpses and rubble. German soldiers died by the millions on the Eastern Front, frozen in Russian winters or overwhelmed by Soviet counterattacks. As the Red Army advanced, millions of German civilians fled westward, with hundreds of thousands dying during the evacuation. By 1945, Germany lay divided, occupied, and broken, its population decimated, its cities destroyed, its future uncertain. But 2 nations dwarfed even these catastrophic losses. 2. China, the forgotten Holocaust. China's losses remain staggeringly underreported, approximately 15 to 20 million deaths. Japanese invasion in 1937 brought unspeakable atrocities. The rape of Nanking saw hundreds of thousands murdered and brutalized in weeks. Japan's biological warfare experiments, forced labor programs, and scorched earth tactics created suffering on an incomprehensible scale. Chinese civilians faced starvation, disease, and systematic mass massacres. The conflict merged with Chinese Civil War tensions, multiplying the chaos. Yet China's sacrifice receives far less recognition than European theaters. These millions died resisting Japanese imperialism while the world looked elsewhere. So, which nation suffered most? The answer will stagger you. 1. The Soviet Union. The unimaginable toll. The Soviet Union lost approximately 24 to 27 million people, almost 14% of its population. This number exceeds the combined losses of all other European nations. When Nazi Germany launched Operation Barbarossa in 1941, it triggered the deadliest conflict in human history. The siege of Leningrad alone killed over 1 million through starvation and bombardment. Stalingrad became a meat grinder where hundreds of thousands died for every street. Soviet POWs were systematically starved and murdered. Over 3 million died in German captivity. Entire Soviet villages were burned with inhabitants inside. The scorched earth policy, brutal winter warfare, and Stalin's own brutal tactics created unprecedented carnage. 27 million Soviet deaths, more than all American deaths in all wars combined, multiplied by 50. World War II wasn't just a conflict, it was industrialized death. The numbers aren't just statistics, they're millions of erased futures, lost children, and families that simply ceased to exist. So there you have it. The country with the most deaths in World War II was the Soviet Union, with an unfathomable 27 million lives lost. This World War II death toll comparison reveals how countries with highest deaths World War II suffered unequally. When we examine World War II death statistics and World War II casualties by country, the Soviet Union World War II deaths dwarfed all others. Understanding which country lost the most in World War II and studying these deadliest countries in World War II through World War II death count explained helps us grasp the true scale. This World War II death count explained isn't just history, it's a reminder that behind every statistic were real people with dreams, families, and futures stolen by war.